The Office of the Public Protector has now acknowledged receipt of President Cyril Ramaphosa's written answers regarding the Phala Phala farm saga. Earlier, the President's spokesperson confirming on the channel that the submission had been made. Let's talk now to legal expert Modidima Mannya, who joins us to discuss what this means. And I said advocate, even though we had discussed that you are attorney now, so congratulations. Well, let's go to the matter at hand. Let's just start then with the fact that it's now in deadline. The President had asked for an extension, Mr. Mannya, and that was not granted. And of course, he was under the threat of a subpoena to provide his answers. In a sense, his hand was forced. Would that be the right characterization of this?
Not necessarily. I think the first thing that my sense is that it was problematic for the presidency and the president to ask for an extension and being granted an extension, request another extension. I would have refused the second extension, whatever the reasons were, whether good or bad for the extension, but it didn't send a good message. It created an impression that the president is dictating the terms of engagement and that there's some preferential treatment. But the issue of the subpoena is one of the provisions in the Act that is availed to the public protector when she's of the view that she's not receiving the necessary cooperation and or people are not compliant. So I don't know why the president wanted an extension. I just think that it was not appropriate to request an extension. But he has now complied, and I think that is commendable because the alternative message would have been that he's avoiding to answer.
You know, we're going to have Corruption Watch on a little bit later on, and they really echo a sentiment that we've heard, you know, in several quarters of South African society, that if the president doesn't comply, to the point that you made a little bit earlier, this environment of secrecy and a lack of, you know, availing yourself for scrutiny becomes enhanced. And that is the last thing that we need at this point, well, at any time in South Africa, but at this time specifically, given our recent troubles. How much do you think this action today goes towards reversing that perception?
Well, firstly, maybe let's start it where it started with a political party, the ATM, lodging a complaint. And in my view, and I know that there are politics around it, and I'm putting that aside and saying, I think it's important that a party like the ATM take that type of step, because that is in line with our constitutional values of accountability. And that is exactly why certain categories of people voted for them, to ensure that they are held accountable themselves and that they hold their colleagues accountable in the leadership of the country. Now, obviously, when the president does not respond on time, it gives rise to speculation. Now, I must indicate that the president, the status of the president is not like me and you, Iman. The president holds the highest moral and ethical authority in the republic, and he's got the highest legal and constitutional obligations. The least that you want is a perception that he is not taking those obligations seriously. And I think that the constitution in any event envisages somebody who's wholly beyond reproach. Now, you must bear in mind that the public doesn't know all the nitty-gritties of what's going on. So people will act on the basis of what is thrown out in the public domain, but that on its own can create a dangerous situation where confidence and trust in the president and the presidency and the government as a whole is lost. So we don't need that.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be incorrect, right, Modidima, to say that his persona and that of the office of the presidency in this moment, you know, as the number one citizen, are indivisible. And so, you know, the reputation and the trust in that institution is being eroded through his conduct. We don't see it separately, we see it as one.
We can't see it as one, Iman, because once he's elected as a president, we even get bothered about where he sleeps and what he eats and who he mixes with. So he almost loses that little personality that he has. He's now the head of state. It will be difficult to see the president joke and say, I'm seeing Mr. Ramaphosa joke. I'm seeing the president joke. So it's important that office comes with all these limitations and all these responsibilities. And it takes away his personal life. I mean, the president is guarded 24 hours. When you drive on the freeway, you'll be pushed off the road. It's because of the responsibilities which we gave him. So it can't be convenient and say, well, he's now acting as Mr. Ramaphosa. I must, though, indicate that we must bear in mind that the investigation of the public protector may have difficulties if it is investigating his private affairs, because that is not permissible in law. But be that as it may, it is important that he has now responded. The public protector will be able to make a further assessment and decide on the way forward.
That's important what you just said, and I think we need a little more clarity and detail on that. The split between the execution of his duties in office, which gets investigated, and then his conducting of business in his own capacity. Just talk to us about the complexity in her investigations regarding that dichotomy.
Yeah, well, in simple terms, Iman, the Executive Members Ethics Act relates to the performance of official duties. It does not relate to your personal activities, although you hold this type of office. Now, the question should be and will be whether whatever happened at Phala Phala happened to him, or he was involved in his capacity as the president, or it was something that had to do with personal affairs. Of course, thus far we can say, based on what we know, that the farm belongs to him personally. The activities that happen there are unrelated to the state, although there's an involvement of the state, for instance, in terms of security and other things. Now, the Act does not permit the investigation of the personal affairs of people to whom the Act applies.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you also being available at the last moment for us. Legal expert Modidima Mannya, thank you for your time.